Hey folks, it's Nate coming at you. September 19th on a Sunday evening. Nice and cool outside, and it's dark enough now where I can come out here and do some Bladestyle demos. So, tonight we are going to go through some basic ignitions. I was just in a really interesting and cool post over in the ProffieBoard support group with Shane Overton, another local, really super nice guy in the Facebook community. Does a lot of excellent help for people with ProffieBoard support, Bladestyle stuff. He's a really good guy. In fact, he's one of the people I've gotten some of my code style snippets from recently to improve some of my styles. Anyway, so if you ever have an opportunity to talk with him about ProffieBoard stuff, you will come away learning more than you knew before. Anyway, so on that note and in that vein, what I'd like to do tonight is go through some basic ignition styles for Proffie Saber blade styles. And so if any of you are familiar or have ever gone to FET263's Bladestyle library and have gone through the process of building a style using his template, you'll notice that he has certain options that you can select when you choose a power-up effect. And so what these are, when I say Bladestyle ignitions, what these are blade effects that you can trigger on the style when the sound font kicks off its out file, right? So this is not a preon. A preon happens before the out file triggers. Okay, so this is when the out file on your sound font triggers and your Saber initially does its ignition. There are certain Bladestyle effects that you can incorporate that sync up with that out file. And so there are 7 that I wanted to go over with tonight that are sort of the basic offerings that you can find on FET263's Bladestyle library. There are some unstable power-up effects, some stable power-up effects, some power surge power-up effects, and then within those, some do a bright white effect, and then others do a bright color effect, usually sort of doing just a brighter version of whatever blade color you've selected. So what I'm doing is I've pinned this to the royalty sound font for Kyberphonic, and because it's a sort of a nicely sounding generic font that has a fairly nice out file ignition sound. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run through the 7 different options on this one config that I have. And so the way I've done it is I'm doing a little color coding too. So the first 4 that I'll show you are all unstable ignition power-ups, and I'll be using a red blade for that. And then the next 2 after that are stable power-ups, which I'm using a blue blade. And then the last one is the pilot light ignition effect, which I'm using a purple blade for. So let's get started. So this first one, and these are all being done on an audio flicker blade. And so this first one is a power-up unstable white. Okay. So what you can see there is that it does a nice white flash and does a little bit of a rippling effect. And what it's doing there is it's actually using different shades of white before it drops into the base blade. So it's going through like a bright white, then a mid white, almost like a silver, and then a darker white, and then base blade colors. Let me show you that again. Okay. So there's about 3 or 4 different transitions that ignition sequence goes through before it drops down into the red blade. And then I'll talk in a future video about the cooldown and the retraction effects, which are very similar. Now these aren't the only ones that are available in Proffie. These aren't the only ones that are available in Proffie. You can use basically any kind of ignition sequence that your mind can develop in the style code. I'm just going over these because these are the ones that are sort of pre-templated by Fernando in his Bladestyle library that are available for those of us who don't do a lot of custom style coding on our own, but are more likely to find some level of enjoyment just sort of picking and choosing what's been developed as a way of learning, right? So, all right, so this next one. So this next one is a power surge unstable variant, and this is doing a, this is another power up unstable version that drops into that is white, that drops it into a red blade. So you notice that one was a little bit cleaner of a transition. It had less levels to it. Let me show you that again. And it's a little bit brighter on the top end, and it transitions into the red blade a little bit quicker. Okay, so now, and the third one, this one is an unstable power surge power up, and this is using a bright red, then will drop down into the red. Let's see here. Is this the right one? No, that was the other one. Let me get into the third one here. All right. So you notice that one was really more of a texture difference, where you have just a little bit brighter of a red color. So it's got some red and some whites incorporated in it, but it's really that texture difference that you see using sort of like the front end of a power surge style blade, where you see a lot of the like a more fuzzy, rough texture of the blade before it drops into the smooth blade style. So let me show that again. And that one happens to be one of my personal favorites. I like the really bright white one, the one I just played before, and I like this one too. I use them a lot in my blade styles. Okay, so the fourth one, this next one is the last of the unstable ones, and this is also a power surge unstable that drops in, that uses a bright color, but it's a different version of it. So you notice this one again has a little bit fewer transitions. It's not as fuzzy, but you still have that sort of surge effect on the ignition before it drops into the main blade. So I'll play it one more time. So those are the 4 unstables that you can choose from in PhET's library. And then now we're going to move on to the stable versions. So this is a power-up stable white that drops into a blue blade. So notice that was really more of a blink. Okay, so you see that white flash and then dropping into the blue blade, and that almost looks more like a blinking effect because it's not using any sort of different blade style effects. Like it's not using a brown noise flicker or a random per LED flicker. It's basically using the same blade style type as your main blade is going to be, and then just sort of using a burst of white and then drops into your main blade. So that one is actually using, let's see, let me get word wrap here on my config file really quickly so I can actually see what the style code is doing. So that power up stable white, that is doing, yeah, so it's doing an audio flicker blade style on the power up, which is the same blade style that the blue, that it drops into with the blue. It's basically just doing a burst at the beginning in white color. It has an 800 millisecond TR fade value, then drops into the blue blade. So I'll show you that one more time. Okay. All right, and then here's the second stable power up. This is the power surge variant, and this is using Yeah, this is using a bright color, so this is going to be using a lighter version of blue that then drops down into the regular blue. This variant is one that I actually use with a lot of my Canon themed blade styles. Like if I'm doing a Graflex Luke or an Obi-Wan or a Leia or a Rey, something like that, or even Kylo on his bright red blades. I do this one a lot for the Canon themed hilts. Doing that power surge startup with a lighter version of the blade color that then drops down into the actual blade color. So I'll show you one last time. So that's a neat one. And then so the last one is going to be the pilot light ignition, which I don't use as much, but it's worth showing because it's one of the options that you have to select. And on this one I'm using a purple blade. Okay. So there's not much to that one. Is like a very, very tiny spark right at the beginning. And part of the reason why that is because this particular one, the pilot light ignition effect, is generally used to pair with the pilot light preon, like the Rise of Skywalker Rey spark preon or whatever. There's other types of spark preons that this one is usually sort of paired with. So this one doesn't do a whole lot all on its own, just as an ignition effect, unless it's being paired with a preon. But you can still use it on its own. It's fine. It's just not. It's not going to. It's not as much of an effect as the other 6. So I hope this video was helpful. I'll leave the style code. I'll actually put the style codes in this video too, if y'all just want to take a look at these different styles and see how the different effect ignition pieces of the style code are written, so that you can see the sort of the differences on paper, so to speak. Feel free to grab them, download them, and incorporate them into your styles, or even if you just want to use them as your basic audio flicker styles. So with that in mind, let me... That was my power level I didn't put in there. So let me just go through with you. This is what the actual blade style looks like. It's the same for all 7. It's just a basic audio flicker style that I put together. Where it has a flash-on-flash wave, and it's using a blast wave, and it's using a mid-blade responsive lockup with a stabilized end of lockup transition effect, and it starts the lockup with the mid blade, so it's not a full blade start. It's just a mid blade bump start. And then a responsive lightning block. And then it's using a basic stab, a responsive stab. And then it's using a responsive melt, as well as, see if I can make a tip drag for you. I can't get a tip drag right away, but it's also using, just a standard responsive tip drag. So that's the blade style that I'm using for all of these different ignition examples. So feel free to use the styles if you like. I'll post the pastebin URL in the video comments. And thanks for watching, y'all. May the force be with you, and here's to a safe and sane work week next week. All right, take care, y'all.